And we have some other attendees in here already, which is great. How was your weekend special?
Everything was good. I just slept a lot
Nice.
because I finally got like most of the stuff unpacked, so I only have a few boxes left. Yes,
That's pretty good.
much better. And Spooky is adjusting.
Nice.
I've asked him not to play with his squeaky toys
I
during
hope
this
he
meeting.
behaves. That's funny.
How was your weekend?
Good. I am happy to be home and with my family. My son Wally had a doctor's appointment this morning.
Oh, okay.
Well,
And then you traveled this past weekend, right?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll share with you all. Everyone, welcome. Just going to let another minute or two pass before we get started, see if any other folks want to join. Especially you and I are matching today. Is that navy and
Oh.
white?
Yep, navy and white.
Love it. Great. For folks who are already here, if you could drop in the chat box where you're dialing in from, as well as which program you're interested in, full-time, part-time, or online. So where you're dialing in from and which program you're interested in the chat box. I'm assuming you could, yeah, good. You can use chat box. Wow. Jawad, you're in Islamabad. Thank you. I know it's in the evening for you there. You're with full time. Edward, you're interested in full time. You're down the street, Georgetown Ministry Center. Great. You're this next person, Musa Mill, is also at Georgetown full time. Oh, this person, Omar, you're dialing in from Germany. Cool. Also in full time. Also appreciate you accommodating the time zone. Nick, you're in Milwaukee. That's Central Time, right? Think you're 1 hour behind? Yes. Okay. Great. Nice. Okay. So I'm hearing full time. I haven't heard anyone interested in part time or online, though we are going to talk about all three just in case someone is exploring. Hello, Furkan. Welcome. Oh, great. Nick, you're interested in the dual degree with Walsh. Awesome. We'll talk about that as well. For those who just joined in the chat, you can put where you're dialing in from, as well as which MBA program you're interested in. Oh, you're in Mexico, Furkan. Awesome. Great. Chris is interested in the online MBA. He's in LA. Cool. Hope you're having some nice sunny weather. Furkan, you're interested in the part-time program, the Flex MBA. Cool. Jessica, welcome. You're interested in full-time. Chanel, you're interested in either the online or the part-time, and you're based in New York. Welcome. Got a good mixture of locations here today. Great. And Jessica, you're also based in New York. Great. I always think it's interesting. What if you and Chanel crossed each other on the street and didn't even know it? All right. We can go ahead and get started. Thanks for being here. Nick, I know you said you're excited. We're excited to have you. Okay, so other folks may join, which is great. This webinar is being recorded and will be circulated. So if you need to refer back, you can do so either through the recording or, of course, reach out to us. Just to kick things off with some introductions, my name is Anne Kilby. I'm Associate Dean of MBA Admissions. This is my 18th year in higher ed. Been at Georgetown for the last 8. Love Georgetown. I hope you feel that through the call today. And then I have the pleasure of being joined by my colleague, Special. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Special Coleman. I am the Associate Director of Engagement. This is the beginning of my fourth week with MBA admission, so very excited. But prior to this, was in residential living at Georgetown University.
Mm, Thank you, Special. We're thrilled to have her on the team. For everyone, you're at this moment, you're not on video. Feel free if you want to come on video, if that helps you at all with engagement. We'd love to see you, but if not, you do you, whatever you're comfortable with. So, a couple other administrative announcements. One, I did mention that we're recording this session. Secondly, I'm going to save all of your questions till the end. And when we do get to the Q&A section, I'm going to ask you to put all of your questions in the Q&A box to have one central location. Where you'll find that on your Zoom bar is underneath the More button. So you'll see a circle with 3 dots. It says More, and then there you'll see Q&A. So that's where you'll drop in your questions for us to go through at the end. Oh, there's no option to turn on your videos? Okay, sorry to ask you to do that then. Thank you, Nick and Selena, for clarifying. Well, Special and I will be your entertainment then from a video standpoint. Okay, so you all are here because you are considering exploring the rolling admissions period for the MBA program. And the purpose of this webinar is to inform you about what that looks like, share considerations, and ultimately encourage you to move forward in the process if that makes sense for you. So let's first go to the agenda. So what we're going to share in the webinar, first I want to do a check-in for where we are in the admission cycle. What's behind us? What do we still have to come? And some data around that. Then I'm going to start with the deadlines so that you all have a sense of timing and expectations. I'm going to bring up the deadlines again at the end just so they're fresh on your mind. Then we'll go through application components. So what is needed from you in order to submit your application. I'm going to show you a snapshot of class profiles because this will help you get a sense of your candidacy and your fit at Georgetown McDonough, how to be competitive, and who to look forward to in terms of your peer group. Then we're going to go through program finances so you have an understanding of the investment coming in, as well as scholarships to know what you'll be considered for. And then I'll leave us on the contact us page while I go through your questions. Okay, so let's do it. This slide has the most text to prepare you. So where are we in the cycle? So what's behind us? What has occurred already in the cycle? We've had the early action round, round 1 and round 2. We have enrollments from those rounds. For round 3, we had a recent decision release, and they are still making their admissions. They're still making their decisions on enrollment. So they have until May 13th to decide if they're going to accept their offer or not. Then looking to the future, we still have rolling admissions period. So rolling admissions is live now. So you could absolutely submit an application right now and be considered in the rolling admissions period. To set your expectations about remaining seats in the classroom, so I'm going to share with you admit expectations, and then, internally, we have an estimate for how many people admitted will accept our offer, which is called yield. So for full-time, we are expecting to still admit 50 to 70 people in rolling admissions. For part-time, 20 to 30. For online, 20 to 30. The class size for full-time usually is around 240 people. The class size for part-time and online is usually around anywhere from 50 people to 70 people. I know that's a spread, but historically that's what we see. So that's to give you a sense on how many admits are still to be expected. And I hope the takeaway in sharing those numbers is that there are absolutely still seats available. We rely on rolling admissions to complete our cohort. In terms of scholarship considerations in the rolling admissions period, we use the same criteria as the other rounds. So what that means is we use scholarships as a tool to craft a high quality, diverse cohort community. So that means that we are looking for indicators of your merit. So what indicates a high quality, both quantitative and qualitative measures, as well as what are your unique contributions to enhance the diversity of our community. And those attributes are going to come through more clearly as we go through the application components and how we define them. In terms of scholarship funds, we, at the beginning of the cycle, when we're planning our finances, we ensure we have earmarked funds for each of the rounds. So round one has a certain allocation for scholarships, rolling admissions has a certain allocation for scholarships. The only caveat is that those round three decisions I mentioned up at the top here, they have until May 13th to deposit. So our budget is a little bit contingent on their behavior. So we have a prediction on how many people will accept their scholarship offers. If less accept, that leaves more money for rolling admissions. If more accept than predicted, that leaves a little less money. No matter what, there is money. So every person who will be admitted to the rolling admissions period will automatically be considered for a scholarship. You do not have to apply for a scholarship, signal anything to us. We know you all want money. We will consider you for what you are eligible for. Okay, so that's our check-in of where we are in the cycle. Again, the takeaways are absolutely still spots available, absolutely still money available. All right, dates. And these are all live on the website in case you ever need to quickly reference. We have different deadlines depending on if you're an international candidate. International, really what we mean by that is if you are, for full-time, if you're an F1 seeker, so you'll need an I-20 and a student visa. Otherwise, you're domestic. Even if you have an international citizenship and you don't need an F1, then you're domestic. So really this is F1 seeking or not. Okay, for the online program, for international, you'll see your string of dates here. So your application deadline is June 11th, June 23rd is the decision notification, June 26th is the first deposit deadline. Same sequence for the rest. So find if you're F1 seeking or not, and then the program, and then you'll see your application deadline underneath. You'll notice for the part-time online program for domestics, you have the most time remaining. So, and that really has to do with there's less preparation that you need to do in comparison to the full-time. And the way that we determine these dates is, let's say you find out from us on this decision notification date, and then you make your deposit on this bottom row. So let's use an example. Full-time, you hear from us, you're admitted on July 13th, then you deposit on July 17th. This will still give you 2 weekends prior to orientation to get prepared. So we've baked in at least 2 weekends for preparation. Both that applies for flex online, part-time online, as well as full-time. For international, these dates are chosen because June 10th, for example, that's going to give you 3 weeks to gather your I-20 documentations before they're due. So ideally, if you're an international full-time student, you already are researching how to finance the program. That tends to be what takes the longest for your I-20 materials, so that when you can submit your documents, you'll be able to do it quickly. So you won't even need those 3 weeks, but we did bake in 3 weeks before your I-20 documents are due. And just to clarify, for Flex Online, we do not grant student visas. But if you are outside of the United States, we will give you passage for the residencies. Okay, so we'll revisit these dates again at the end because I want them fresh on your mind, but just wanted to set your expectations up front. Now, the decision notification, this is the latest date you will hear from us. Rolling period versus all the other rounds, we actually do review on a rolling basis. So the latest you'll hear from us are these dates, but we really try to process your application and issue you a decision within 1 to 2 weeks. So we really try to move quickly. Okay. So now we're going to move into the application components because I want you all to have a clear understanding of what's needed from you to submit in order to have a complete application and get a decision in the rolling period. So these are the different application components we'll go through. Let's start with academic history. We will need your unofficial transcripts. So unofficial, usually candidates have the ability to download those transcripts themselves. Rather than official transcripts, you have the registrar send them to you. So unofficial should be fairly accessible, and that's all we need for your admissions review. The things that we're looking at, we are going to look at your performance within your academic history. So we're going to look at your progression over time. We're going to take a closer look at your quantitative course performance because the MBA program is quantitatively rigorous. So we want to find evidence of your success in quantitative courses. We will contextualize your transcript evaluation. So we'll consider the rigor of your major, the rigor of your institution. And if there's anything that if there's anything that might be beneficial for the admissions committee to know when evaluating your performance, maybe there's context or circumstances that might have affected your performance, please offer that in an optional essay. For example, there are students who have had to work 2 part-time jobs to pay their tuition, and that absolutely would affect your time that you're able to offer towards academics. We've had students who have unfortunately undergone health circumstances, family emergencies. So please prevent the admissions committee from making assumptions by sharing with us that context. In terms of data points, these are the middle 80th percent ranges for the full-time and part-time and online. For your GPA, these are on a 4.0 scale. So 2.75 out of 3.8 on 4.0 and the similar. I'm going to show you quickly on Excel for those of you who are on a non 4.0 scale. So let's see. Let's use for an example. 2.75 was the bottom 80th percent range for full-time, and that's on a 4.0 scale. That percentile is 68.75%. Let me make this bigger. Let me move my zoom bar to get to percent. Okay, so 69%. And so if you're on a 10-point scale, for example, and you graduated with a 7 out of 10, that's a 70%. Okay, so that's how you can translate whatever you put in the denominator on the scale, and then the numerator is how you performed. So you can have a good sense. Okay. Test scores. So first, know that we do have a test waiver policy. You can find it on the website. Actually, Special, could you do me a favor and pull up the test waiver policy on the website and drop it into the chat box and make sure the 2 is for everyone? Thank you. So for the test waiver policy, we tried to make it as clear of a policy as possible so that you can make a self-assessment if you're eligible. What you'll notice is the policy has to do with your academic history. Do you have a STEM degree or a non-STEM degree? And then do you have a certain GPA as a minimum? And if it's non-STEM, we have secondary criteria that we require. The most common we see is, did you have 2 or more quantitative courses with a B or better? So check out the policy. If you meet the criteria and you do not need a test, do not take a test. We created that policy for people where we feel like we have enough evidence in your academic history to feel confident about your readiness. So we don't need the test. Okay. Thank you, Special. Now, if you do take a test, you can take either the GRE, the GMAT, or the executive assessment. We accept all three. We do not have a preference. I would actually encourage you to be strategic in your test selection. So take a practice test, take a sample test of two out of the three, three out of the three, see which one you're most naturally inclined towards, and then take that test. Again, we accept all three. Um, let's see, test scores, the data here. So you get a sense of 80th percent range. This gives you a sense of competitiveness, of eligibility. You definitely want to be within the 80th percent range. And then keep in mind, we use the test score and your academic history as the two primary indicators to predict your success in the classroom. So they can overcompensate each other. So if for academic history, you're towards the lower end of the 80th percent range, well, then you might want to be at least in the middle, be closer to the average. All the average statistics are on the website. But if you have you know, a 3.5 GPA, that puts less pressure on the standardized test. So think of them together. Work experience. So how we define work experience and how it's reported here is post-undergraduate full-time work that is paid. So it has to check those three boxes for reportable work experience, and that's an industry standard. Now, absolutely, the admissions committee will consider any internships, part-time work, volunteer work. We just can't report it. So it will tell us about skill development, the perspective and experiences you've garnered. So it's absolutely important, but again, reportable is post-undergrad full-time work that is paid. The average years of work experience is 5 to 6 years. Again, post-undergrad, full-time paid. And then here are the 80th percent ranges. So typically we're admitting people who have 2 years to 8 years, though they're always outliers. It ultimately comes down to the type of experience you have and what you're hoping to achieve post-MBA. Keep in mind the recruiters coming to recruit our students for post-MBA employment have this profile in mind. So if you are outside of this profile, you'll need to be able to first articulate to the admissions committee why now is the appropriate time for the MBA, because you will also need to articulate it to the recruiters. A bit of advice, if you do fall outside of this band, this 80th percent band, go ahead and submit an optional essay to help us understand why now for the MBA. If you're on the younger end of work experience, I'd recommend you articulate how the quality of your work overcompensates the quantity of your work. So there's a depth and significance of quality. If you're on the upper bound, so you have greater than 8 years of work experience, in your optional essay, talk about why an MBA versus an executive MBA, another degree. Again, why now? And also your openness to different types of career outcomes, because we might need a little more flexibility for recruitment, given again our recruiters have in mind this band. Okay, for your resume, keep in mind the admissions committee is made up of people with a diversity of backgrounds. We have different educational backgrounds, industry backgrounds, so please do not speak in layman's terms. Please do not speak in industry terms. Please do speak in layman's terms so that you can ensure our understanding. And a great way to help us understand your success, your progression, is to quantify your successes where possible. So that could look like number of clients served, anything about the scope of your work from a money standpoint, or a stakeholder, number of stakeholders, number of people managed, number of projects managed. So you'll know best how to quantify your role. I'm just giving you examples for inspiration. All right. Ooh. Now let's move into these four parts of your application. So that's just a little glimpse. Start with recommendation letter. So we require one recommendation, and who we have a strong preference for is your current direct supervisor, because arguably they should know you best in terms of your daily work and abilities, acumen. If you are applying for the part-time or online MBA, we really need it to be from your current direct supervisor because we need to hear that they are on board, they agree with your participation because you will need flexibility and you'll need them to be able to offer that. From a process standpoint, how the recommendation works is once you input the recommender's name and email address in your application form, regardless if you've submitted it, just when you input those fields and hit save, your recommender will automatically be sent our recommendation form. In that form, they're going to be asked questions like, how do they know you? For how long do they know you? And essentially, then they're asked your strengths and your areas for improvement. So feel free to coach your recommender, support their writing by sharing with them what you believe your strengths and areas for improvement are as a starting point, and they can layer on their opinion. And then once your recommender hits submit on their form, it'll automatically attach to your application. Personal essays. So we require one written essay, and then we also require one video essay. For the written essay, you will be offered 3 prompts, and you'll choose the one that resonates most with you. And I would encourage you to be strategic about your prompt selection. I like to work backwards. So think about what you're hoping the admissions committee takes away from reading your essay. Is it, wow, Special has so much valuable experience working directly with students? You know, is it Tony is passionate about developing his employees? Whatever it might be. So think about the output and informing what you're putting in your essays. The obvious, but I'll state it, please answer the prompt. The prompts have multiple questions. Go through, check them off that you've answered them. Please proofread or have a friend who's good at grammar and writing to proofread. Please make sure you've used the correct school name. Know that we are assessing your written communications as well as hoping to get a better understanding of who you are as a person, as a professional. For the video essay, this is 1 minute in length. And it's a time for us to put a face, a personality, a presence to your application. It forces the admissions committee to look beyond the paper. And we get to know you better in terms of the prompt is tell us about how you spend your time outside of work. What are you passionate about? What is a hobby, an adventure, a simple pleasure that's recently brought you joy? Know that we don't assess you on production quality, so use whatever is available to you, your work laptop, your phone. We do need to see you and hear you. So if you're fancy and know how to do like B-roll footage, that's fine as long as at least some of the video we see you speaking. We are assessing your articulation, your presence, your style. Again, it gives us a sense of your personality and what that would look and feel like in our community. Resume. We've talked a lot about the resume already. The only other addition would be if there are any work gaps that are 3 months or longer, there will be a text box on the application to ask you to address it. Again, it's a way to prevent the admissions committee from making assumptions. Recruiters are going to ask you about it as well, so we want to make sure we understand. And with that, please do put date stamps, month and year on your resume. Lastly, the interview. So, if you're going to be admitted, you must have an interview. So, from a process standpoint, what this looks like, the admissions committee reads applications first. So, we want to see if on paper we deem you eligible for admit consideration. And then, if so, we'll extend an offer to interview. So, if you've been invited to interview, that's a great sign. That means you're moving forward in the process. We want to get to know you more. In terms of preparing for the interview, you should prepare for it like you prepare for a job interview. Do your research. So have a good understanding of why the MBA, why Georgetown's MBA. I think it's a good practice to go ahead and draft out some stories that demonstrate your character. So stories that demonstrate your leadership or teamwork ability or a failure. I think it's helpful to have those stories available for easy access when you're answering questions. Absolutely. We, other schools, are going to ask you to tell us about yourself. Tell me about your background, your academic professional background. So that's something you can practice ahead of the interview. And ideally, you're answering that question in 5 minutes or less. You also need to prepare that the interview could be conducted by different types of people. It could be an admissions committee person like Special or myself. It could be a current MBA student. It could be an alum. At the end of the interview, you'll have a chance to ask them questions. So make sure you have questions prepared for any type of person. In terms of length, the interview is 30 minutes total. Again, we'll take up most of that time asking you questions and then time at the end for you. In terms of modality, these can be virtual over Zoom like this, or they can be in person on campus. It's up to you. We do not have a preference and we weigh them the same. Okay. Now let's get a sense of your peer group. So the class profiles. So these are some fun infographics. We're starting with the full-time MBA. This was the class that started in fall 2025, so last fall. Let's highlight a few things. The class size, we have some demographic details up here. We have funnel data, so total applications, again, down to the class size. Some more demographics, average age, work experience, GPA. We already reviewed some of these statistics. A takeaway from this chart is how diverse academic background we receive. In a Mythbuster, only 30% studied business. Otherwise, it's a lot of different disciplines. Similarly, for industry background, the highest concentration we had were people coming from financial services downward. So a lot of diversity there. And a takeaway, because this absolutely does not add up to 100%, is there are a lot of people coming from smaller percents. So again, great diversity. You should look forward to global diversity. So 40 countries represented for the class that started in the fall. This is the normal. This is our standard. We really value global diversity to enhance your global mindset. Languages, lived, studied abroad, and then we already went through testing. For part-time MBA program, we closed the class at 67. Again, funnel data from 170. You have some demographics up here. We almost had gender parity. This is outstanding. So 49% were women. Even though for the part-time program, everyone must live or work in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, we still had 10 countries represented with dual citizenships or international students who are sponsored to work here. Another great diversity of undergraduate, fields of study, industries, and we went through tests. Lastly, the online program. We closed the class at 48. You can see funnel data. Same format of demographic details. This is interesting. We had a split, same of business and humanities. Also, 10 countries represented, great global diversity. And then industries, more government than for part-time, which is interesting. And then again, great gender representation, 44%. That's fantastic. All right, so those are your class profiles, and I hope a takeaway is that you are excited about joining this kind of community and studying in a classroom with this diverse group of people. Now, serious topic. Let's talk about your investment, your commitment. We want to make sure we are transparent so that you can feel comfortable, informed when you're making this decision. For the full-time program, you have a flat fee per year. So for the class starting in the fall, your per year cost for 2026 to 2027 is the $74,000 figure. And then for the next year, you will likely have a different fee. We typically increase our tuition each year, at least for inflation. So we announce these fees 1 year at a time. It's really great for you all to know that more than half of the students who started in the fall received a scholarship. And their average award was $25,000 per year. Again, that's the average. So some below, some higher, including up to a full ride. For the part-time and online program, unlike full-time where the fee is set, what is set for part-time and online is your per credit cost. So it's not a yearly cost, it's a per credit cost because you might have different pacing. Part of the flexibility on these part-time programs is duration. Most people take 3 years to graduate, but some expedite in 24 months and some take up to 5 years. So the cost per year will depend on how many course credits you're taking that year. And we have a sample curriculum to help inform you with that planning. For scholarships, almost half received a scholarship from our office, which is also great. You'll notice the average amount is less than full-time because, as a reminder, part-time students are earning an income. Your full-time workers, part-time students. And for part-time and online, your scholarships are dropped in year one. So you get that money in your first year. For full-time, these are per year awards. So for the full duration. At the bottom here is a sample. These are partners for fellowships. So let me take a moment and explain. All of the money, all of the scholarship money comes from MBA admissions. So we manage the finances. However, we have so many partners, and this is not all of them, this is just a sample, where they have criteria for fellowships. So for example, for AmeriCorps' partnership agreement is that MBA admissions must have granted you at least 15% of the tuition as an award. And you must be a veteran of AmeriCorps. So if we granted you at least 15% of the tuition and you're a veteran of AmeriCorps, we will name you an AmeriCorps Fellow. Okay, let's do another example. Reaching out. So reaching out's criteria is, I don't remember, they are not a good one because I don't remember their monetary minimum. Okay, so let's choose National Black. Okay, so to be named a National Black Fellow, you must be a member of National Black Association. And then you need to get any money amount from MBA admissions. So if we, from a merit and diverse crafting perspective, issued you $10,000 and you are a member of National Black, which we collect on the MBA application, then you'll be named a National Black Fellow. You can be named as many fellows as you're eligible for. If you are not eligible to be named a fellow, then your scholarship will say merit-based scholarship because it doesn't have a fellow naming. Okay, I hope that is helpful and informative. And again, you don't have to apply for these fellowships, signal anything to us. We automatically will consider you for all you're eligible for. Some more on merit-based scholarships. We have different types of scholarships. The individual scholarships and their details are all listed on the website, but they either fall under themes of crafting our community and diversity, are focused on global, industry specific, or embrace the spirit of Georgetown. This year is the first year we are offering a scholarship award specific to the part-time and online students, and it's called Transformative Leader Award. And here are the details there. And again, automatically you'll be reviewed for any of these awards that you're eligible for. So here is a visual display of you. This is you working your way through the process. So after you've submitted your application, we review, our processing team, make sure that we have everything we need in your application components. Your transcript isn't blurry, your name is on things. If anything's missing or incorrect, we'll reach out to you. So if you don't hear anything in the review stage, it's great. You did your job. And then, as I mentioned, we read first and see if, at least on paper, you're eligible to advance. And if so, we invite you to interview. And then after we have all of this rich data, then we review you in the committee to make your decision. So I hope a takeaway here is when you submit your application, you should not expect to get an interview invite the next day. You have to give us time to ensure your application is complete. Then we have to read it, and then we offer interview invitations. We also are constantly auditing to make sure anyone who should be invited is invited. So be patient with us, but now that we're in rolling period, things do happen quickly. And by quick, here a reminder of the dates. So we reviewed these already, but just as a refresh, these are the application deadlines based on your category. This is the latest date you'll hear from us. You may hear from us earlier. That's the goal. And then this is when you need to make your deposit. And I should have called this out. As you'll notice, there is a very tight turnaround between when you hear from us and when you need to pay. We're talking 4 or 5 days. So please be ready. Make sure that you have liquid funds, credit card, bandwidth to make your $2,000 deposit because you will need to do so again quickly. And go ahead and mentally prepare. If you're offered an admit decision, are you ready to accept? Is this really what you want to pursue? Because then you won't have a lot of time to make that consideration between. Okay, I'm going to leave us on this page while I go through your questions. So feel free to start dropping those in the Q&A box. So not the chat box, the Q&A box. And as a reminder, the Q&A box can be found under the More button on your Zoom toolbar. While you're putting in your questions, just to let you know what's on this page, 4 QR codes. This QR code will take you to a page where you can text chat with MBA admissions counselors as well as current students. You'll see bios so you can choose who to chat with appropriately. This QR code, request more information, will allow you to download the brochure. Explore Georgetown McDonough will take you to our website, and you can use the top right search bar to navigate. And then the bottom QR code is our listing of upcoming events. So you can see events like this one where you can sign up and attend. Great. Oh, and I should have mentioned, you all are going to get an application fee waiver for this event. Now, how you will retrieve that is we are going to send you an event survey after this event to find out if you have feedback to share. Once you fill out the survey, you'll get the code for for the waiver that you will put in your application when prompted for payment. Okay, so let's go through your questions. And again, please put your questions in Q&A. If you put a question in chat, please bring it over to the Q&A box so I can have a one-stop shop. All right. To kick it off, first question is, basically, when and how will you be notified if you get a scholarship? Great question. I didn't address that. So in your admit letter that you receive at decision release, it will list in that letter if you've been awarded a scholarship. So if the letter just says you've been admitted, you were not awarded a scholarship. Otherwise, it will be very clear. We have a separate call out section for your scholarship award. This person asked about specific quantitative classes that you should have taken. Great question. So as a reminder, to take a step back, we use both your standardized test and your undergraduate history to predict your success in the MBA classroom. With that, we're also predicting your success in quantitative courses in the MBA program. So with the standardized test, we're looking at the quantitative section. In undergraduate history, and this is your question, we're looking for quantitative classes. And how we define those would be, or some examples would be math classes, so that's calculus, algebra, trigonometry, statistics classes, research methods, any engineering class, basically. What are some other quantitative classes? We do not count economics, macroecon and microecon, because those really vary in terms of their quantitative nature. But we do count like econometrics because that's a quantitative based econ class. I know I'm missing something. Special, can you think of other quantitative classes? Oh, accounting,
Accounting, finance,
finance.
yeah.
Yes. So accounting classes, finance classes. And really for evidence, again, it depends on how you perform in the standardized test and if it needs to overcompensate. So ideally, you've taken at least 2 quant classes in undergrad. We want to see the exposure as well as your performance. So a B or better, the more the better, but depends on your major. Okay. I'm so glad you asked this question. So resume length is one part of your question. Um, the industry standard for resume length is if you have less than 10 years of work experience, 1 page. If you have more than 10 years of work experience, 2 pages. That's it. So you have to be selective in what you're showcasing. And then this person asks, since they're on the younger side, how do you show the work experiences you had in undergrad? So you absolutely, I've seen people say like JP Morgan summer associate, or you could say summer internship. We'll also see that clearly because of your dates, and we'll say, oh, it ran over June to September. It was a summer internship. There's also a chart in the MBA application where you will write out the employer name, if it was full-time or part-time or volunteer, as well as if you were paid. So that's another way we'll get an understanding. So do list experiences that you feel like are significant, and especially experiences that might help us understand how you will achieve your goals. So exposure, skill development. This person asked about the recording. Absolutely. We will distribute this recording to all who registered to the event. So if you are granted a full ride scholarship, that includes, so actually, let me take a step back. Our scholarships are tuition-based scholarships. So the maximum scholarship we can issue is full tuition. We don't have additional stipends. And so if you were given a $20,000 scholarship, that goes towards your tuition payment. Now, we do have graduate assistantships, student assistantships you can apply for. Those postings typically go live in your student portal around August. And there are usually about close to 100 opportunities across campus. So you can apply for an assistantship at Georgetown McDonough, or you might apply for it in the law school, in the policy school. All are available for you. For international students, you can work up to 20 hours per week on campus, and that will not intervene with your F1 status. Okay. And then the second part of this question, will full rides be offered in the rolling period? Uh, to be honest, it is rare for someone to get a full ride, period. It does happen, but again, the average award for full-time students is $25,000 per year. And this past year, 52% received an award. So of the 52%, the average was $25,000 for full-time. Great question. So only apply for the year in which you plan to matriculate. So only apply if in the rolling period if you plan to start the program in fall 2026. If you know you want to start the program in fall 2027, only apply in that admission cycle. We only issue deferrals uh, in extreme circumstances in categories of either military related, extreme health related, or legal immigration issues. So it is not a guarantee. You have to have a deferral review, and we absolutely do not want you coming in expecting a deferral because the order of events needs to be you applied for the upcoming fall, you were admitted, you enrolled, accepted that offer, all with the intention of joining the upcoming fall. And then a circumstance happens that's out of your control that falls into one of these extreme categories. And then we'll work with you to see what your options are. Ah, great. If you are a business owner, who should you ask for a letter of recommendation? Great. So if you're an entrepreneur, you don't have a supervisor, so you can't ask them for recommendation. Instead, I've seen in that circumstance asking a client, if you have a board, asking them, a mentor or advisor. These are options for you. Similarly, if you work in a family business, we do not want a family member submitting your recommendation. They're biased. So if you're in a family business, think of an indirect supervisor if a family member is your direct supervisor. So, great question. How do we calculate years of work experience? So, I already mentioned full-time work, paid post-undergrad, but I didn't mention up until what point. So, we count work experience up until July of your matriculation year, assuming you're still employed up until that point. So, let's say if you applied in February, you would have 2 years of work experience. But by July, that's so through February, March, April, May, June, July, 6 more months. So we would actually say you have 2.5 years of work experience. So that is, Selena, I hope that answers your question. So this person's asking about the video essay and what differentiates a strong response from an average one. Great. So, the prompt is we're asking you to tell us about a hobby, a passion, an interest, an adventure that brought you joy recently. what makes this response more meaningful if you explain why it brought you joy? So, for example, something that brought you joy recently is you cooked a meal for a group of friends. Why did that bring you joy? Well, you got to showcase your culture through that cuisine. You got to bring people together. You uh, had a really fun conversation and you felt more connected. You were bonded. These are some examples of why that cooking experience was meaningful. Another one could be you ran a race. That's a great achievement. Why did it bring you joy? Well, it was rewarding because you uh, practiced hard, you were diligent, you were disciplined in your training, and you got to see the reward of that by through competition. Um, you could have really enjoyed the team spirit side of it. I don't know. I'm giving you examples. So the why really makes it more, it gives it more depth. Also, experiences that are authentic to you. So, when you hear someone talk about what brings them joy, usually you can see it. You can feel it makes them happy. Share something authentically that brought you joy and no judgment, whatever that may be. We love to hear what brings you joy. Okay, right. This next question is about timing for the deposit, and especially as it relates to scholarship. So, for example, for full time, the latest you'll hear from us on your admissions decision is July 13th, though you may hear earlier. In your admit letter, you'll find out if you received a scholarship. It might be zero, or it might be something else, a money amount. And then you have until July 17th to make your deposit. Now, even if, let's say, you hear back from us earlier, you hear back from us on July 1st, your admit decision, your deposit deadline is still July 17th. So you will have to make a decision on your scholarship. But you will be informed because it will be in your admit letter. Okay. So you are going to receive this recording. So you're not going to get the slide deck, but you're going to get the recording where we have the display of the deck. I'm so glad, Nick, you asked this question. I was hoping someone would bring this up. So deciding between the rolling admissions period and applying next cycle. Okay. Um, I would let that decision be informed by when do you want to start school? Do you want to become a student this fall? Then absolutely try for rolling admissions. Worst case scenario, if you aren't admitted this year, then you apply again next year. And the admissions committee has a very strong bias towards reapplicants because we know you must be focused on Georgetown in order to go through the process again. And we want people who are excited about Georgetown to join our community. Also, a benefit for reapplicants is that you can repurpose your essays, so repurpose your application materials. You also have access to one-on-one coaching with an admissions committee member in the month of August, which is between admission cycles. And we only offer that to reapplicants. So we will offer you coaching in terms of exposing why you weren't admitted and then recommend what you could do to strengthen your candidacy. So absolutely try it this year. As I mentioned at the very beginning, I can just, oh, this is going to be a little annoying. Ha. Okay. As I mentioned at the beginning, there are absolutely spots available. So we need folks to help us form our final cohort. Wow. Okay. Yes. So apply now if you want to start school this fall. In terms of test preference, so we've been seeing more people take the GRE in the past few years. That's trending upward. Still about half test takers take the GRE to the GMAT, and then a smaller sample takes the executive assessment. My feeling of why is because more and more schools are accepting the GRE. The GMAT is the traditional test that all business schools have accepted, but now more schools are accepting the GRE. Also, if you're applying to the MBA and master's programs, many master's programs accept the GRE. I sincerely am telling you, we don't have a test preference. It will not make you more competitive to take one type of test versus another. So please take the test that you're more naturally skilled at taking. This person is asking about how a quantitative focused career is considered, and especially if it can overcompensate for your academic background. So absolutely it's considered. You know, if you are a statistician, you are you work in finance in a finance role, you're an accountant, you are a a risk assessor. You know, I'm naming all these examples. Absolutely, we know on your day to day, you have a very quantitative career. You work in analytics. Um, with that being said, use your resume to your advantage to help us understand how quantitative your job is in nature. In terms of how that can balance your academic history, still the two primary indicators we use to predict your academic success are these academic indicators, undergraduate history and standardized test score or test waiver. With that being said, I can see how your professional work experience can help us see your skills in action, how you've practically applied those, um, what skills you've developed, but it won't necessarily tell us how those skills come through in a classroom setting. That's where, again, undergraduate history and other courses taken, as well as test scores, will tell us. But you can make the case, make a case in an optional essay of how your work experience should showcase your quantitative acumen. This person is asking about application deadlines for fall 2027. So those have not been released yet. Typically, our first application deadline is, goodness. Special, would you mind looking that up for me? It should be on the website, all of our application deadlines.
Yes, of course.
Thank you. Typically, the application goes live in the month of August for the next cycle. So the application that's live right now is only for students applying for fall 2026. And again, these application deadlines are the absolute latest you can apply. You can apply right now, but this is the latest you can submit your application for rolling. Oh, this is a good question. Are there resources available for resume review at Georgetown? You know what I would suggest for you is chatting with a current student here in the text box. Ask them if you can send them your resume for review. Admissions committee can't, that puts us at a conflict of interest because we have to evaluate your resume, so we can't also coach you on your resume. You can ask us questions of best practices or do you think it would resonate if I write this or formatting? But in terms of actual resume review, I would ask a current student if they'd be willing to do that.
To answer the question prior, our first deadline is around September for early action, and then the next October for round one, January for round two, and then April for round three. And then now we're enrolling.
Perfect. Thank you, Special.
You're welcome.
I think I've answered this next question, so I'll keep going. Oh, and Special just answered that question. Great. In previous cycles, what has been one of your favorite or most memorable joy stories shared in a video essay? Oh my goodness. I'd love to understand how students successfully balance being professional while showing that authentic personal side of themselves. Ooh, okay, Jessica. Let me think. Okay, sure. Um, I loved when someone tells me about their pet and they show me their pet and they're like, this pet means so much to me because of these things, what they offer me, what we do together, and you get a better understanding of how they spend their time, and you can just see and hear the joy in their voice. Um, Sometimes we have people who are actually doing experiences. So you have someone who's cooking or playing an instrument and then telling us why that act brings them joy. You can see someone who's outside and showing you a park where they love to spend time and how that brings them joy, why that brings them joy. So different settings. I've seen very simple um, uh, presentations that have been really great where they're just able to articulate clearly why something's brought them joy. And I'm like, I understand exactly what you're trying to convey. That was such a clear articulation, um, not scripted, please don't read to us. So that's a way for it to be authentic is to not be scripted. I don't know. Special, do you have any advice for what's a good video essay?
I recently just started reviewing, but my favorites have been when I am done with the video, I'm like, oh, that's good for them. I'm glad they get to do that. I wouldn't do that, but I am glad they get to hike
That's great.
several miles in the mountains. So those are my favorite. Once I at the end I feel why they like it, I guess is a good
Yes.
way to say. And then I like when they mention people in the video. Like I watched one the other day about hiking and he mentioned all of his friends. I like getting to know the group through that
Oh,
little interaction.
the community.
Yes.
That's awesome. That's a great answer. Okay. I know we're over time, so if folks need to leave, no problem at all. Thank you for joining us. I'll stay and answer questions. Special, stay if you can. If you can't, yeah. Okay. Will we only accept one reference letter? Good question. So we require one. We will allow up to two, but I will tell you 95% of people submit the one because we really are looking for the perspective of your current direct supervisor. Where I see people submit two would be, for example, if you've only had your supervisor for a short amount of time, a few months. Then you still ask them to submit your recommendation, but then you also ask your previous direct supervisor because they'll have a better understanding. Also, for our entrepreneurs in the room, maybe two would help us give a more well-rounded experience. But again, I really recommend just the one current direct supervisor. This person asked about Grad Plus loans. So starting July 1 of this year, there will be a lifetime annual cap for Grad Plus loans. I wish I had a crystal ball, and if I could see if that will change at some point in the future, I have no idea. So as of right now, or as of July 1, that will be the policy. Now, I should say, I should have mentioned this, so I'm so glad you asked this question. Georgetown University, because of this policy change, did research and created partnerships with 6 private banks to get loan agreements for Georgetown students. Those are available for international and domestic students. So we recognize that you all who would have been relying on federal loans will have a gap to fill, and you can do that through your vendor of choice. We also have done the research on the private banks that we've established good rates with. Answered a lot of these questions. Ah, in your optional essay, feel free to use that space to address multiple topics. You might be talking about your undergraduate performance. You might be talking about how you have less years of work experience. Um, you can use headers or just write them in separate paragraphs. There's no specific format needed for optional essays. So yes, you can address multiple things in one essay. What is a factor within the rolling process that you wish applicants approach differently? Absolutely. For the rolling period, I feel like we see more than other rounds rushed applications where you'll notice mistakes. So I know time is of the essence and you want to submit sooner because then you have a likelihood of hearing sooner, but at least still proofread or have a buddy do that for you. Um, because if your application is incomplete, then it will delay things. Then we have to communicate with you what's missing, and then you have to send it to us. And if there are errors, then that doesn't look positively on your application review. In terms of age, there are no restrictions. You are eligible to apply at any age. It is our job to inform you in admissions of our class profiles, what it would look like to be competitive, so our 80th percent band. But absolutely, you know best if the timing is right and why you're seeking the MBA now and why the MBA versus another program. So again, if you fall outside of that typical work experience band, an optional essay is really useful. For the video essay, if you have editing skills that you want to showcase, you absolutely can. And we have to see you talking for, I would say, at least half of the essay, because the point is to humanize you and see how you are presenting. There is a application fee waiver for the session. You'll get it after submitting the survey. In terms of test waiver, we do offer a test waiver. I know you joined late. Special, would you mind just dropping it in the chat box once more? Thank you. So read the policy Special is going to put in the chat and see if you're eligible for the test waiver. So if you studied abroad or have transfer credits, ideally we would have those grades in order to help us assess. If we don't have grades, if it's like pass fail or it just says transfer, then it's hard for us to assess your performance. Almost done with the questions here. If you are a reapplicant, again, you can request one-on-one personalized coaching with the admissions committee. So if you're going to be a reapplicant now, go ahead and email us at georgetownmba@georgetown.edu or chat with an advisor and ask for a one-on-one coaching session. If you end up not being admitted this year and want to reapply next year, we offer that coaching in the month of August. Okay, we did it, team. We made it through your questions. If you have additional questions, again, please chat with us, reach out to us, attend more events. Ultimately, want to wish you the best of luck. If you feel like Georgetown is the best place for you, I hope that is the case. Again, we love people who love Georgetown. If we can offer you any more guidance, support, let us know. You can do it. I believe in you all. Take care and have a good rest of your day.